Imagine holding the power of life and death in your hands, yet being absolutely paralyzed by fear. In the heart of the ancient Roman Empire, one of the most powerful magistrates lived a terrifying double life, enforcing the death warrants of innocent people by day, while secretly sharing their forbidden faith by night. What happens when the empire you serve demands the very soul you've been desperately trying to hide? And what if the divine sign you've been praying for doesn't come from the heavens, but from a broken man locked inside a dark dungeon? The heavy bronze seal pressed downward, its intricately carved imperial eagle sinking into a small pool of boiling blood-red wax. It was the ultimate symbol of executive power, a single gesture that dictated the fates of thousands across the cold, bureaucratic machinery of the Roman Empire. But the hand holding the seal was shaking. It trembled so violently that the hot wax spilled over the edges, staining the polished mahogany of the desk. Marcus Valerius, a high-ranking magistrate with absolute authority, could not control his own body. He was paralyzed by a secret terror. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Marcus Valerius was a man who possessed the ancient equivalent of a corner office, a sprawling, gated luxury estate, and the kind of total financial and legal immunity that most citizens could only dream of. From the outside, his life was a testament to the Roman dream. His villa was a masterpiece of architectural triumph, wrapped in towering marble columns, with bright Mediterranean sunlight slicing through tall windows to illuminate floors made of imported mosaic tile. Yet, inside his own mind, Marcus was living in a state of suffocating claustrophobia. He was living a double life. Marcus was a secret Christian. For years, he had managed to balance his prestigious public career with his quiet, hidden faith, rationalizing that he could do more good from a position of power. But the political climate in Rome had suddenly and violently shifted. The emperor had just issued a new, inescapable edict, a universal mandate requiring immediate, public sacrifice to the Roman gods from all government officials. It was not merely a tax or a civic duty. It was a legally mandated test of absolute loyalty. To refuse was treason. To comply was a betrayal of the soul. This new law transformed Marcus's theoretical guilt into a crushing daily agony. He was no longer just a bystander. He was an active, complicit participant in a bureaucratic machine of murder. Every day, he was forced to sit in his lavish office and stamp documents that authorized the arrests, property seizures, and executions of his spiritual brothers and sisters. He was enforcing the very laws that were slaughtering his hidden family. He spent his nights pacing the marble floors of his estate, consumed by a paralyzing paranoia, waiting for the inevitable knock on his door. He prayed desperately, begging God for a sign, a miracle, a voice from the sky, a sudden rescue, or at least a definitive command to step out of the shadows. But all he received in return was silence, leaving him trapped in the agonizing guilt of hiding his faith while others bled for theirs. The sheer weight of the Roman Empire was not just found in its armies or its architecture. It was found in its casual, chilling bureaucracy. The next evening, Marcus was required to attend a lavish state banquet with his fellow high-ranking officials. The dining hall was a portrait of imperial excess, dripping with wealth and sensory overload. Slaves moved silently through the room, carrying silver platters piled high with honeyed figs, roasted meats, and expensive imported wine. The air was thick, with the oppressive heat of too many torches, and the loud, boisterous laughter of the men who ruled the known world. As Marcus sat on a plush reclining couch, a heavy, purple-bordered toga draped over his shoulders, the conversation around him turned to the day's events in the Colosseum. His peers did not speak of the executed Christians with hatred or religious fervor. Instead, they discussed the mass executions with a terrifying, pragmatic indifference. They spoke of the believers as if they were discussing city pest control or the logistics of a weekend sporting event. One official, a wealthy senator, wiping grease from his chin, casually complained that the morning executions were taking entirely too long, throwing off the schedule and cutting into the highly anticipated chariot races scheduled for the afternoon. The casual, jovial cruelty of the room hit Marcus like a physical blow. His soul was screaming in protest, recoiling at the horrific casualness with which human life was discarded. Yet, his survival instinct took over. Marcus forced a tight smile, nodded in feigned agreement, and raised his silver goblet of wine in complicit silence. He swallowed his food, though it tasted like ash in his mouth. His colleagues noticed his physical deterioration. One official leaned over, noting Marcus's pale skin, his hollow eyes, and the slight tremor in his hands as he held his glass. The official clapped him on the shoulder, attributing the symptoms to the stress of administrative overwork and, perhaps, a mild summer fever. They believed his physical shaking was the result of a dedicated public servant carrying the heavy burden of the law. They were entirely blind to the profound spiritual agony that was tearing him apart from the inside. They could not see that his cowardice was costing him his peace, fragmenting his mind, and turning him into a hollow shell of a man. He hated his peers for their blind cruelty. But as he sat in the suffocating heat of the banquet hall, Marcus realized with a sickening clarity that he hated himself even more. The breaking point arrived late that night. Having excused himself from the banquet, Marcus retreated to the quiet, isolating silence of his massive villa. The grand house was entirely dark, save for the flickering light of a single oil lamp on his heavy wooden desk. The shadows danced frantically against the walls, mirroring the chaos in his own mind. Resting in the center of the desk was a new, heavily sealed parchment, the execution list for the following week, that required his final authorization and the stamp of his bronze signet ring. Marcus unrolled the heavy parchment. His eyes scanned the neat, bureaucratic columns of names, ages, and alleged crimes. Suddenly, his breath caught in his throat. The ink on the page seemed to blur and swim before his eyes. There, listed halfway down the column, was a name he recognized instantly. It was an elderly man, a gentle and devout elder of the underground church. A visceral, sensory memory flooded Marcus's mind. He was transported back years earlier, to a hidden riverbed miles outside the city limits. Under the cover of a moonless night, he could feel the shock of the freezing, pure water being poured over his head by this exact elderly man. He remembered the profound sense of spiritual cleansing, the quiet joy, and the dangerous, sacred bond forged in that secret baptism. Now, the old wound was violently reopened. The man who had ushered him into eternal life was now waiting for Marcus to sign his death warrant. Marcus dropped his execution stylus. It clattered loudly against the wood, the sound echoing through the empty room like a judge's gavel. Complete panic set in. The walls of his luxurious study felt as though they were rapidly closing in, crushing the breath out of his lungs. He could not sign the document, but if he refused, his secret would be exposed, and he would be the next man dragged into the arena. Overwhelmed by cowardice and the terrifying reality of physical torture, Marcus made his choice. He pulled a heavy leather chest from beneath the floorboards and began frantically packing it with gold coins, jewels, and travel documents. He would abandon his post. He would flee Rome in the dead of night, slipping away to the distant provinces where the edict was poorly enforced. In that moment of frantic packing, Marcus crossed a midpoint of no return. He was formally deciding to walk away from his faith, to abandon the prisoners, and to silence his conscience forever, just to save his own skin. But before he could disappear into the night, an unexplainable, agonizing compulsion gripped his chest. He could not leave without seeing the face of the man he was condemning. Using his supreme executive authority, Marcus navigated the dark, winding streets of Rome until he reached the Mamertine prison. It was a subterranean nightmare, located 30 feet underground, accessible only by a hole in the ceiling. It felt like descending directly into the underworld. The air was pitch black, freezing cold, and thick with the smell of damp earth, rust, and death. Marcus presented his heavy bronze ring to the heavily armed guards. He ordered them to unlock the heavy iron doors and step away, claiming he needed to conduct a highly sensitive private interrogation to extract the names of other underground Christians before the morning executions. The guards hesitated, but the authority of the ring was absolute. They stepped back, leaving Marcus alone in the damp corridor, holding a sputtering torch. He approached the iron bars of the holding cell. Inside, huddled in the darkness, were several condemned prisoners. Among them was a nameless man, beaten, chained, and waiting for the dawn. Marcus expected to find broken, weeping victims something to justify his own paralyzing fear. Instead, as the torchlight hit the prisoner's face, the man did not cower. He slowly stood up, the heavy chains rattling against the stone. The prisoner stepped close to the rusted iron bars. He looked at Marcus's rich clothing. He looked at the heavy bronze eagle ring gleaming in the firelight. Most of all, he looked at Marcus's hands, which were shaking so violently that the torch was casting erratic, jumping shadows across the cell. The prisoner smiled a smile of unnerving, otherworldly peace that completely disarmed the powerful magistrate. "The bishop who was martyred yesterday told us you might come," the nameless prisoner whispered, his voice hoarse, but incredibly steady. "He gave me a message," he said. "The magistrate with the heavy bronze eagle ring, whose hands tremble. He is one of us." Marcus froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. The torch nearly slipped from his grasp. The prisoner reached through the bars, his bruised hand gently resting over Marcus's shaking fist. "He told me to tell you, do not walk away now. The sign you asked for is right here." The prisoner's eyes locked onto Marcus's terrified face. "We are the ones in chains, yet you are the one who cannot breathe. Do not fear them, brother." The hidden truth struck Marcus like a physical blow. The divine sign he had been begging for wasn't a miraculous rescue or a booming voice from the heavens. God was speaking directly to him through a nameless man in chains. The sign was the courage placed in someone else to call him out of the shadows. The sun rose over Rome, casting long golden shadows across the marble steps of the great public basilica. Marcus had not fled. He had not taken his chest of gold to the provinces. Instead, he arrived at the administrative center of the city, dressed in his official purple-bordered toga, his heavy bronze ring resting on his finger. The building was crowded with hundreds of Roman elites, military commanders, and lower-level bureaucrats. At the center of the vast, echoing hall stood a massive 40-foot statue of the emperor, flanked by burning braziers. This was the moment of the strongest public test. As Marcus stepped forward to take his place at the magistrate's bench, his superior official blocked his path. The older man held out a small silver bowl filled with sacred incense and handed Marcus an execution stylus. "For the emperor, Valerius," the superior said casually, his voice echoing in the sudden quiet of the hall. "Pinch the incense, sign the morning docket, let us be done with this unpleasant business." The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Hundreds of eyes rested on Marcus. The machinery of the Roman Empire had publicly trapped him. He had to perform the ritual and sign the paper, or he would be exposed on the spot. The silence was deafening. The suffocating paranoia that had haunted him for months surged one final time. Marcus looked at the bowl of incense. He looked at the heavy bronze ring on his hand, the literal tool he used to seal the fates of his spiritual family, the physical manifestation of his worldly power and his spiritual compromise. Then, something miraculous happened. Marcus reached into the silver bowl and took a pinch of the incense. But instead of throwing it into the burning brazier, he slowly moved his hand away from the fire. He opened his fingers and let the incense fall harmlessly to the cold marble floor. He dropped the execution stylus next to it. "I cannot," Marcus said, his voice ringing out with a startling clarity that cut through the cavernous basilica. "I will not sacrifice to a false god, and I will not sign the deaths of innocent men. I am a Christian." In that exact moment, a profound moral reversal occurred. The physical symptoms that had plagued him for months instantly vanished. His hands stopped shaking, a suffocating weight lifted from his chest, and his breathing slowed. For the first time in the entire story, Marcus stood completely straight. The terrifying anticipation that had ruled his life gave way to a massive, overwhelming wave of peace. He realized, in front of the most powerful men in Rome, that a clean conscience was worth infinitely more than a safe, hollow life. The reaction of the Roman state was swift, cold, and violently bureaucratic. There was no grand debate, no dramatic courtroom argument. By confessing his faith and refusing the incense, Marcus had committed high treason. Within seconds, the Praetorian guards stripped him of his earthly authority. They tore the heavy, purple-bordered toga from his shoulders, leaving him in a simple linen tunic. Marcus did not resist. He felt a profound sense of spiritual dignity returning to his soul. As the guards bound his hands, he deliberately slid the heavy bronze signet ring off his finger. He left it behind, letting it clatter onto the magistrate's table. He had traded his earthly wealth, his safety, and his status for eternal freedom. Reclaiming his true identity in Christ, and his rightful place among the family of believers. He was immediately marched out of the basilica and led toward the Colosseum. The transition was jarring. He was taken down into the dark, subterranean tunnels beneath the arena floor, the same tunnels he had once condemned others to walk. The air smelled of sweat, frightened animals, and spilled blood. Above him, the roar of 50,000 spectators vibrated through the stone ceiling, a deafening wave of noise demanding violence. Yet as the heavy wooden gates groaned open, revealing the blinding, absolute sunlight of the arena sand, Marcus did not walk forward as a victim. He walked forward as a victor. What his fear and cowardice had nearly cost him, his courage had fully restored. According to early Christian memory, the legacy of Marcus Valerius did not end in the sand. While the historical record of this exact exchange is debated, what matters is the profound truth, this memory preserved by the early church. Some sources suggest that his abandoned bronze signet ring was quietly recovered by a sympathetic servant. Decades later, when the persecutions finally ceased, that same heavy bronze ring was placed deep underground. The story leaves us with a haunting final symbolic image. The heavy bronze signet ring, once the ultimate symbol of imperial power and human compromise, rested utterly useless and abandoned on a rough-hewn, dusty tufa rock altar in the dark, silent catacombs of San Callisto. It was left in the pitch black, swallowed by history, while the man who once wore it walked upward, out of the shadows, and into the blinding, everlasting light. The story of Marcus Valerius forces us to confront a deeply uncomfortable question. How much of our true selves are we willing to compromise for the sake of safety, status, or societal approval? In our modern world, we may not face the brutal sands of the Roman Colosseum, but we frequently encounter the heavy, bureaucratic machinery of conformity. We are often pressured to pledge allegiance to toxic work cultures, corrupt systems, or ideologies that quietly demand we betray our own conscience. Marcus's journey teaches us that living a double life, hiding our deepest convictions while participating in systems that harm others, ultimately destroys us from the inside out. True cowardice isn't just running away. It's staying and remaining silent while pretending everything is fine. Furthermore, this narrative radically shifts our perspective on how we seek divine guidance. When we are trapped in moral paralysis, we often look to the sky for booming voices or miraculous interventions to solve our dilemmas. We wait for a grand sign that makes the hard choice easy and painless. But the profound truth revealed in the Mamertine prison is that God frequently speaks through the most unexpected, marginalized voices. The ultimate sign is rarely a lightning bolt. It is usually the quiet, unshakable courage of someone else, often someone with far less earthly power than us, calling us out of the shadows. Finally, Marcus's physical healing, the sudden end to his tremors, only occurs after he drops the incense. It reminds us that our bodies keep the score of our moral compromises, and true peace is never the absence of danger. It is the presence of a clean conscience. If Marcus's journey out of the shadows resonated with you today, please hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs a reminder to stand strong, and make sure to subscribe for more powerful, forgotten stories from sacred history. Now, I want to hear from you. We all face moments in life where it feels significantly easier to just blend in, stay silent, and go along with the crowd, rather than standing up for what we truly believe in our hearts. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt pressured by a workplace, a community, or a system to compromise your deepest values just to keep the peace or protect your position? How did you handle that pressure, and what did that choice cost you? Or, have you ever found unexpected courage from a source you least expected? Drop your thoughts, stories, and experiences in the comments below. I read every single one of them. Be sure to click the video on your screen right now to watch our next incredible true story. The forgotten desert monks who guarded a sacred secret for 40 years. I'll see you there.